it's an autograph. It starts with an R.
Yeah.
You know, where's that? Rupert Pupkin, you're welcome.
Yeah.
You know, like you can keep that.
Yeah, it is really interesting. It's like
shit.
Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.
All right, everybody. What's going on? It's one fucking hour time. I am Evan Husney, of course. This is the show where we talk about one movie for one fucking hour, and we are joined by our usual two dudes here. We got Tom Fitzgerald in the house. Tom, what's going on?
Hey, everybody. Happy New Year. It's 2023 with you boys here.
That's right. Here we go. Let's get the show back on the road. We said we'd take a little bit of a break, a little hiatus here into January, but here we are, our first official episode of the year. Also, welcome back to the show, Mr. Marcus Herring. How you doing, Marcus?
what's up, everybody? I'm back. I'm not dead, but just wanted to shout out to my posse. Thanks for the concern, but they haven't got me yet. So
he's fine. You're tanned, rested, and ready, right? You're in Cabo for 2 weeks. Okay,
Death Valley. Yep.
We also saved you from not having to watch or be a party to the movie Babylon, which we reviewed as our last episode. So
I watched the episode, and I can't say it was a strong rec from you guys.
Yes, it wasn't a strong endorsement. Although I will say, before we get into this week's episode, I've had so many people reach out to me and be like, now I'm going to see it. I wasn't going to see it, but now I'm going to see it. So I think we inadvertently sold some tickets. So you're welcome, Babylon.
We bumped up their numbers. You got it, Damien. What's his name?
Damien Chazelle. Hashtag sponsored. Okay, so all right, let's get into it. Back in the action here. We're talking about a real ass movie. We got episode 53 coming your way. Of course, we're doing that on Martin Scorsese's 1983 film, King of Comedy. All right, guys, I'm going to start that clock if you all are ready.
Let's do it.
Should we do it? All right, clock is started. And before we get into it, I'm just going to give a little backstory here on the flick. All right, so Martin Scorsese's King of Comedy tells the story of Rupert Pupkin. God, that's one of the best names in all of movies. It's the best. Anyway, an autograph hound that lives in his mother's basement, of course, played by Bob DeNiro in a totally against type role, underrated in my opinion. A delusional outsider with lofty dreams of becoming a world-famous comedian who is obsessed with late-night talk show host Jerry Langford, played by a friend of the show, Jerry Lewis, which I'm sure we'll get into. And Pupkin is determined to be a guest on his program. But after countless rejections and relentless attempts to get Jerry's attention go super wrong, he resorts to a kidnapping plot in order to achieve his desperate and terrifying 15 minutes of fame. All right, so we talked about, before we hit record, we were just kind of a little bit fascinated at where this movie sits in the Scorsese oeuvre. Coming right after Raging Bull and before After Hours. And Tom, you were sort of saying that, this was a hard time for old Marty at this time, right?
Yeah. Well, from what I've read, he was having sort of a nervous breakdown, a physical breakdown, a spiritual breakdown, because he came off his own Magnolia. We use the term Magnolia to represent the big blowout clusterfuck movies that are made after the big films. So Taxi Driver is his Boogie Nights in this case. So, and then of course, New York, big bomb, it took a lot out of him just to make it. And then it didn't cross the finish line and wasn't well received in that sense. And then he did push through with Raging Bull, but I think that took a lot out of him too. I think he was into substance abuse, punk rock, like a lot of destructive behavior, and he really tied himself into a knot and kind of was crawled in the fetal position into making the film after Raging Bull, which is this one,
right?
And it's a smaller budget film, a smaller scale film, I guess, in the sense for the first time for him, and it's tonally pretty different, which is very interesting. Followed up by a similar one with After Hours. So that's sort of this early mid-period Marty that I find very interesting.
Totally.
And in both cases, he's addressing comedy. which was kind of new for him too. So
Yeah,
it's all very
I'd read that it's like sort of like you said, it's a transitional point in his career where he's looking at the world had changed. It's like this, we're well into the 80s. It's a post Star Wars world. The 70s like auteur era was like winding to a close, and he was having a hard time. Like the studios were having a hard time justifying like giving him like big budget films. So he was doing like an experiment with this size budget, an experiment with comedy to kind of like just see how it goes. Like maybe this will be his new path, And it also seems like maybe he wasn't like 100% sold on doing this picture, but it's like it's DeNiro brought the movie to him or whatever, and brought it in. Like he's like helping spearhead the project too, right? So
which weirdly was like same with Raging Bull. Actually, it was a book and a script that De Niro kept pushing under the nose of Martin Scorsese. He was not that interested in Raging Bull originally.
Yeah.
But De Niro was persistent, and the same thing with this 1974 script.
Right.
What is it, Paul Zimmerman, whatever? And it was lying around. It's so weird to think they were discussing yay or nay on King of Comedy in like 1974.
Yeah, pre-Taxi
That would have been a
Driver.
different film. Yeah, no. If it was made in 1975, it'd be really different for a few. I want to see that movie. Kind of.
True, but yeah, that is the story that I had read as well. That De Niro was pushing it on Marty in '74, and really before they would kind of kick off their collaboration, that would last forever. So it's interesting to see that I think he sort of chalks it up as making it as a favor to him in some ways. But also probably to help find whatever his footing, as you said, was going to be into the '80s. But the scriptwriter, as you said, Paul Zimmerman. I mean, it's really interesting because, from what I've read about the script, he was sort of fascinated, looking into the minds of these sort of more fanatical autograph hounds, on the circuit, and really, and to me, that's what I've always found to be interesting about it. Like that's such a unique. Okay, here's our protagonist, to really look into the mind of somebody. And we've seen, that character or a character like that in culture, continually. We still do. The sort of outsider.
Limp Bizkit's Fred Durst just took his turn at bat with that one with John Travolta. I kind of love that movie. What is that called? Holy
Fanatic.
shit. It changed titles. Fanatic, yeah.
Right.
So he did it. Even Fred Durst went there. Can I just say? I gotta say, I think there's a seminal figure in that period, the early '70s. We can move on. To establish the earth of where this film was growing from, is the guy who would steal Bob Dylan's garbage. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
No.
Okay. Well, he was I was just reading all about him. He's a garbologist. Was what he called himself. And he's this crazy freaky guy. Yeah, he's like a freaky looking, like kind of yippy Abby Hoffman guy who was like, I have every right to dig through, like Bob Dylan's pizza boxes, and it was very weird. And he would like show it off and look at it. It was when Dylan was living on McDougal in the Village. So, and he became sort of his own weird minor celebrity about like the Bob Dylan's Garbage Man. I think that probably ignited a lot of thinking, like, where are fans going here? You know what I mean?
Sure, true. Yeah. And it's something obviously that we would be much more pervasive nowadays, which is like you have the mom's basement dreamers, the people, and also mixed with that sense of entitlement. Like I should be famous. Of course I should be famous, and that sort of derangement, as the sort of, the phenomenon of celebrity and television grows on and everything. And so that's
also fame for its own sake, the Paris Hilton thing.
Right. And that sort of like Bob Dylan, collector dude reminds me of like the history of just those crazy fans with like, Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin had them, right? Those like fans that would just chase them after them in the streets. The Beatles had them.
Mark David Chapman.
That sort of, yeah, exactly. This movie is like made like hot on the heels of Mark David Chapman like taking out John Lennon.
Well, we maybe just to put a button on this, the whole setup before we get into the film is there's a whole circle of life going on here because of course Taxi Driver begat John Hinckley's obsession and to Jodie Foster, and then he wanted to do a gesture for Jodie, aka Iris.
Well, explain that a little more. You should explain that a little more for people who don't know what you're talking about. Just
all right. So
break it down.
Okay. So John Hinckley eventually in 1981, right when this film was being shot, he tried to assassinate the newly elected Ronald Reagan. And his justification was through all these love letters to Jody, he did it for her, and it was
He was
the same
obsessed
gesture.
with her, right? I mean, he was
Right, and it was because of Taxi Driver, because of her character Iris.
Right.
And Reagan was a proxy for was it Palandine, the politician, fictitious guy in Taxi Driver. And so it's very weird because it's a weird choice. Actually, I've always felt that Scorsese said, "I'm going to go all in on this thing that sort of was happening in the aftermath of my own film Taxi Driver,"
Right.
and it was very topical. Like this
Right.
film was shot when John Hinckley was being arrested and on trial, and all the revelations. And Devo did a song based on his love letters to Jodie Foster, by the way.
Yeah.
So it was a hot
like we
topic.
were just saying when we did Taxi Driver too, we were talking about how that moment brought Taxi Driver back into
Right.
the conversation too, and was showing on cable TV.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that like the clash that like Joe Strummer got his mohawk from the Taxi Driver character,
Right.
and then the Clash are in this movie too.
I
This is
know.
weird. Like,
You're like, what is going on?
super weird.
Yeah. Well, Marty loved punk. Bad Brains are in After Effects. After
After
Shit.
Hours,
After
yeah.
Hours. Yeah, Bad Brains are heard in After Hours. So like Marty.
Pay to Come is playing. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, my last little thing is just, if we're just talking about like Marty's headspace, is I think, Raging Bull, I think he's in the trailer and something technical is going wrong, and he would scream, he'd come out and go, "What is going on? It's taking forever." An entire album side of the Clash album just played, so evidently he would listen to the Clash full volume all day and pace around, kind of with Bolivian marching powder, and so that's where he's coming from. So he's out on a limb here himself. And just the last thing I'll say too, just to, again, the contextualization with Marty's headspace, he was saying in the press at the time, he went from identifying with Rupert Pupkin, by default, like
Wow.
he was more of a Rupert guy.
Wow.
And he said he's become more, well, in this sense, hold on, the context, he's now become more of the Jerry Langford, the Jerry Lewis talk show character.
Right.
Because he's now recognized on the street. And he was saying that was an odd thing for him to have his own sort of, rock and roll celebrity movie director thing. So his identification shifted, I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, like that, I'd read that too. That like the reason he passed on it early is he didn't understand that celebrity. Like he didn't understand what it was like to be a celebrity being chased, so it didn't resonate with him. Like in '74, whatever, when he read the script.
Right.
But in a post Taxi Driver world, people were coming up to him on the street and stuff. So
Yeah, I'm sure.
he felt like he identified with it more. And
Hey,
it's
Marty.
funny, like Jerry Lewis has a bunch of funny interviews like around this film, and one of the things that I was watching he was saying was that that both him and DeNiro were coming to Jerry to be like, what's it really like to be a celebrity?
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah. No,
That's
because Jerry
so
is
crazy.
like every, 3 out of 5 people are going to be like Jerry,
Yeah,
Like,
right.
and if I'm not mistaken, I think some of that footage of Jerry Langford, quote unquote.
Yeah, it's real.
that character-
Yeah,
because they're
the,
saying, "Hey, Jerry,"
the
and
whole
they-
thing was in the script. I think in the script the character's name is Robert Langford, I think, or something like that. And then Jerry's like, it should be Jerry, because then anywhere I walk or anything I do, they're going to be,
Right.
"Hey, Jerry, it's Jerry,"
I love it.
And then so they
great,
use that, for real. And then they also used a lot of his, Jerry Lewis's real life experiences, like the "you should die of cancer," and all that stuff the old woman says on the
evidently
the
that
payphone.
happened. Yeah.
That happened. Things happen. So, but it is interesting in hindsight to be like him, Robert De Niro asking what it's like to be a celebrity to
know.
Jerry Lewis.
once
Well, it's all relative,
Yeah. Every once in a while, there's a great bit of casting like that where the person's story, like real life story, informs like the character in the movie, or like it gives you that stature. Like the other one I was thinking of was like Bill Murray in Lost in Translation. Like he's like a celebrity because of that.
Right.
So it has such a huge effect on me. I love like when that little bit of casting does that. I mean, we're going to talk about Joker, I'm sure, which unfortunately has a lot of.
Unfortunately,
I think that just broadly speaking, we all are aware that that Joker is like a total like reboot ripoff of this film, right?
It's criminal.
No, it's
one
an
of the
homage. Marcus, it's an
homage. It's
homage.
an homage, right? But he tried to do that same sort of casting by putting DeNiro as
he's now Jerry
as
Langford,
the host, right?
Yeah,
but it doesn't. I mean, I feel like that's what his hope would happen, is that it would have the same impact of Jerry Lewis playing Jerry Langford. But really, it feels like he's just using it as a shield, like against criticism that he fucking ripped off this movie. You know what I mean? Because people will be like, "Hey, you ripped off King of Comedies." Like, well, hey, I told everybody I was doing that, and I put DeNiro on the lead.
I think he wants the film to be standing next to King of Comedy and Taxi Driver. Well, he's a douchebag.
Well, sadly, it is now.
So we have to talk about it because
let's talk about it.
Just a few weeks ago, we did "Oh, I hate this movie," and Joker was, of course, in the lineup, and it is obscene to have to even think about it, but. That film with this film, but unfortunately culture is moving in that direction, and it's becoming pretty interchangeable. If you Google King of Comedy 1983, you're going to a lot of times get Joker hits, and it's very sad, and it's a sign of the decline of Western civilization. In my opinion.
Part 2, yeah.
That there's any association.
Yeah, I just, I mean, to me, it's like, I don't want to belabor it, bog it down, because I do want to talk a lot about, King of Comedy, but, to me, it's really criminal because, King of Comedy is not a very well-known movie to begin with. It is a gem, or it's it's beneath the surface. It's one layer down. It's not a household name movie, and so to really borrow a lot, and I'm talking about a lot from that movie, and to call it your own. And then now to have this movie, which is an interesting, gem, curio, whatever you want to call it, have the stink of that awful movie, and fucking Joaquin Phoenix's Tai Chi fucking dancing or whatever is horrible. And that's really
cursed. Yeah.
Crime. It's a crime.
Well, you know what? Let's work on stemming the tide of that and talk about the thing that should be talked about in its own context is KOC, baby.
KOC, baby. All right. So, all right. Yeah. So what do we want to dive into first here? I mean, there's a lot to talk about. I mean, first off the bat, as I mentioned with DeNiro, it's a, this is a really against type, performance for him at that time. Something like, obviously he was, look at, Jake LaMotta, this incredibly, masculine, you fuck my wife, it's a crazy performance. And to go into Rupert Pupkin, as I was saying earlier, this sort of delusional outsider, king shit in the autograph world, is a pretty harsh transition. And I think he's doing it pretty well here, but go on.
Well, I mean, I think the delineation for me, because I vaguely remember when this did come out, that it was a DeNiro you've never seen before in this sense, right. That he's playing ugly, pudgy, schlubby, and jokey, to hit like, hey, I just want to tell you a few jokes. Can I show you my pride and joy? That was pretty violently different and weird, because DeNiro was known as intense more than anything, like kind of a Brando-esque, relatively speaking, kind of person. It was kind of mythos, like he's up high and he only does like big dramas and big deep films, and he's doing like, I'm a little jerk and I'm telling jokes about Emma, it was very shocking. That's what I remember, because as time went on, I mean, hell, Robert De Niro's career, he wound up doing like Meet the Parents and shit.
Right.
So it all comes out in the wash for his whole career, but at the time it was very shocking to see him look like fugly and plain and loud, and to play a moron. He
and
never
cringe.
I mean,
Cringe.
Cringe. No, but like Jake LaMotta is like kind of a brute. He's kind of an ape. He's kind of an animal. But this guy's like a stupid jackass who you're like, oh no, I'm stuck with him in line or something, and he's going to tell me jokes. It's like just a total piece of shit. Nobody from the tri-state area, and that's brilliant, I think, and that's awesome. And I'm glad that he wanted to take a bite out of that kind of character, and it is so different, and he kills it. He embodies that in a frightening way. And just the one thing I'll say, and I'll totally shut up, is my revelation was he's never really a person, Rupert Pupkin. He's always rehearsing and performing.
Exactly. So, that's what I was going to say, is that he just real quick, and I'll throw it to you, Marcus. He has this whole facade that he's constantly performing and then he's putting on and he's portraying this persona he's created for himself, this whole fantasy. I'm sure we'll get into the fantasy aspect of this movie as well too. But you do get a little hint of, disturbing, dark, Travis Bickle-esque, anger and darkness. You get a little brush of it. Obviously, well, in this one scene, and the context of it is that he keeps going into, Jerry Langford's office trying to get, Jerry to listen to his demo tape, which is amazing.
Great stuff.
And
Great stuff.
And then finally he gets, one of the producers in the show to listen to it. And she's like, it's, it needs some work. We'll see on the club circuit or whatever. I think it needs a lot of work. And then he starts to disagree with her. And then when he starts to disagree with her and starts pushing and pushing and pushing, you really do see that, like that moment where he gets real, that whole facade cracks and he gets like real dark. I mean, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like that scene where,
of course.
and that's so you do get a little brush of that. But Marcus, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, no, I think there's actually just to spin off of that. There's a little bit of that in the deleted scenes too. There's like 30 minutes of deleted scenes. I'll probably talk about it a couple times. But
gotta check that out.
There are a lot of extended scenes, because there's a lot of improv in this movie. Like Scorsese wanted to do like a lot of improv, and I think it shows with a lot of the performances. But they go with so that makes all these extended scenes is what I'm saying. But
right.
There's a little bit of a hint of that violent character of DeNiro in one of the extended scenes that they clipped out, and it's at Rita's bar. And he has the character Rupert has a conflict with another guy who's like hitting on Rita there. And actually the guy comes over to and like knocks him. I think Rupert falls out of his chair or something. And then the guy comes over to like muscle over to him. And then when the guy's back's turned, he hits him with the stool. Now it's not like executed very well. You can tell that's probably part of the reason why they cut it out. Like the whole directing, the blocking is just not really working. But Rupert knocks the guy out, and then goes on to like continue the scene. So there's like a little bit of like, they might have been wanting to do more of that, a little bit more of the violence, a little bit more Taxi Driver, a little bit more of that DeNiro. I don't know if it was part of the script or if there's just something they tried or what, but it seems like they kind of played footsie with it. And of course, Rupert is capable of violence. He is dangerous, like he's got that fucking gun. He's like dropping in the middle of the street, he's like,
what's a great moment?
Kidnap somebody.
Exactly. So, speaking of the kidnapping, one moment I liked that shows like, some good Rupert darkness as we're talking about here is Jerry's being very rational with him and pleading with him, right before like Jerry's going to go, Rupert's going to go, to the TV studio. And he's like, listen, I'll forget about this. Nobody's perfect. Like let me just go.
We'll go back. I'm sorry. Yeah. We'll play a tape.
And then Rupert's just like, no. And he just like extra ties him up. And and it's like a shot from above. And it's just like, that's chilling because like he's saying no to a way out of this and being rational. And it also shows that he doesn't care about Jerry because Jerry was, trying to be fake in his own way to get out of the situation and kind of speak person to person and from the heart to heart,
It's not about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was totally rejected by Rupert because, the man is on a mission. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He doesn't like, he's trying to like, he supposedly worships Jerry Langford, right? But like really doesn't care about him at all. He's just trying to use him to stair step him. He actually wants to. Yeah. He actually wants to take his job. He wants to beat him. He wants to take his job and have him be coming to him, crawling to him, asking for
And one of those great stuff. That fantasy. That's one of my favorite shits. Is the fantasy.
6 weeks.
Sorry.
6 weeks. You mean?
I mean, what's 6 weeks?
I'll give you anything, but don't ask me to do 6 weeks. I can't take over the show for 6 weeks. I can't even take over my own life for 6 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, that's so well done. That's some killer acting.
To take over the show for 6 weeks.
Yeah,
right?
6 weeks.
Great.
6 weeks? You want me 6 weeks? I give you 6 weeks.
You know what's really great?
I'll give you 6 weeks.
I want to compliment DeNiro in one sense. This is some really weird, trippy acting conception. He did a great job acting as Rupert.
Yes.
In Rupert's fantasy.
I know. I know.
And you get a different Rupert in his fantasy. And he's more like, and he's more kind of Goodfellas in a sense. He's more,
yeah. You want me to give you 6? I can't do 6 weeks. It's like 6 weeks.
He's like a vet, and it's like, hey, you
Can't do it.
busting my balls here? You know, like, yeah. No, and it's incredible. That's actually some genius stuff,
is.
some levels.
That is
Yeah.
great, yeah.
No, totally, absolutely.
His character doesn't seem to ever listen, like the real Jerry, or real Rupert, sorry, doesn't ever seem to listen to anybody. People are all, like you said, he's always performing. He never hears what the other person's saying, that Jerry's telling him like politely to go away. The cops are telling him he's under arrest. Like he's never listening to anybody. You know, he's always just
not his girlfriend. Like his girlfriend
like
is, or the lady friend is saying like, I think Jerry says you thinks you should go, and he's just
Jumping
like
the gun.
shutting her down. Yeah.
Yeah, we got to get into that scene in a minute, but if I can, I'm so sorry, just because I'm looking at the clock and there's a lot of things I want to talk about.
Clock's brutal.
Is just while we're mentioning the lady friend character, let's just talk about her real quick for a second here. So Rita, the character of Rita, obviously, you know, this film, you know, she's the love interest, and she's also part of his obsession as well too. And one thing to me, it's like that scene where you have Rupert and Rita having this sort of date at this Chinese restaurant, to me is one of the most disturbing scenes in the movie, in the entire movie, for me.
Which is saying something.
Well, which is saying something, but because you already know he's delusional at that point. You know, you already know what's going on. You don't fully know everything, but you already have a good idea, and then you sort of learn that, ooh, she was a high school crush. You know, that he's been obsessed over for decades, you know?
I know.
And like, that's always a red flag, number one. And then, you know, just like his whole speech about loving her and wanting to change her life, and, you know, and then of course, like, you know, of her knowing everything about him and saying, you know, it's so, to me, that just says so much in such a great way, you know, to further how really pathetic this character is, you know what I'm saying? And of course, you gotta love the more scribbled the name, the bigger the fame. Sorry.
Cringe. Yeah, well, can we shoehorn like a little love for like this is an OG Cringe movie?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. We were just talking about that too before we hit record. It was just like, it's like Albert Brooks, what's his name, Andy Kaufman, a couple others, but this is a major Cringe cinematic statement. You know, like. And that scene is one of them where it's like
it's one of the first.
It's an autograph. It starts with an R.
Yeah.
You know. It's like Rupert Pupkin. You're welcome. You know, like you can keep that.
Yeah. It is really interesting. It's like
shit.
It's like, it's so uncomfortable. There's not really the joke. The joke is like just in how uncomfortable it keeps rolling. You know, and like it does seem like this movie was inspired people. I did read something from, you know, I was thinking about The Office, the British Office a lot when I was watching this.
Yeah.
And how it's sort of like King of Comedy plus Spinal Tap, you know, it's like the British Office. But so I looked it up, and Stephen Merchant, you know, like Ricky Gervais' like writing partner, was talking about how this was like something that was definitely big in their minds. Was like, they wanted it to have dead time, you know, and like and have things be uncomfortable, and that would be what the world.
Can I just say, comedians love King of Comedy because it's depicting comedians kind of, but also they just love it because you know, like a lot of comedians are very dark, you know what I mean? Like Opie and Anthony with Jim Norton, like they used to talk about it every other episode basically, and they had sound cues of Rupert Pupkin's laugh when someone said something stupid, you know, like that's terrific. You know, so yeah, comedians and I'll just mention this now is Louis C.K. was on Opie and Anthony once, and he pointed out the scene you're talking about, Evan, and said that there's a very strange detail where when Rupert is gesturing to his girl at the table, in the background is a man you all might recognize because he's in Goodfellas. He's Morrie from Morrie's Wigs, and he's in reality Robert De Niro's realtor, you know, who would find him real estate property. And for some reason, De Niro said, like, man, you should be in movies. And for some reason, though, and this is what Louis C.K. picked up on, is take a look at King of Comedy, everybody. There's a time when the Morrie's Wigs guy is gesturing just like what Robert's doing and he's doing it in the background with De Niro in the foreground. It's very weird. Side note, Pauline Kael, actually pointed that out in her review in 1983.
That's so weird.
That blew my fucking mind. I read that last night. And she was saying that it's a sign that there's kind of a surreal, off-kilter tone to the entire film. I'm paraphrasing, but she's saying, like, is this film ever really setting foot in reality?
Wow.
Like, what is this world that it's in? I mean, there's overt fantasy sequences, but the whole film's a little off, including like Jerry's sort of stylized time when he comes home to his apartment. He's watching some weird 40s movie where someone's stealing something and putting it in their pocket, and then that happens later with DeNiro's date in the country house. So I'm blabbing, but I'm just saying that Morrie's Wigs guy is an example of this kind of off-kilter like space where
surrealism.
It feels unreal.
I think I can shed some light on that from the deleted scenes. more shit.
Deleted scene Jones here.
More shit that ended up in the cutting room floor. But I think because there is a lot of surreal stuff in this movie, I do want to talk about that. I think that one might be just like a result of cutting out like a side plot or something, because in the deleted scene, there's a really weird Morrie's guys all over. He's got his own separate location scene. Where
What?
I'll try to be brief, but Rita gets a phone call from like the Chinese restaurant. Like that's like, I want to talk to the woman in red, and she goes, and it's fucking Morrie is sitting at the side at the other phone, and he's like, "Hey, I'm the guy that was like winking at you earlier," and she's kind of laughing, like, "Oh, really?" And then he's like, "I want to go out for a drink," and so she leaves DeNiro to go like on a date with this guy,
with Morrie's Wigs.
With Morrie's Wigs.
Oh my!
DeNiro follows him because she's kind of like a hustler, I guess. You know, she's doing whatever she can to get by. And so he's like on a date with him, but things get weird. He pulls out like a dildo at one point. It's so
King of
I
dildo.
shit you not. So so it's like Morrie's
dildos.
It's a whole separate scene in his
dildos.
house. And DeNiro's Rupert follows him there and starts calling all the numbers on the house to see like, is Rita there? So I don't know like where it ends, like, but that was like a side plot that I'm not sure if it was supposed to flesh out Rita, you know,
maybe
give more backstory to her, or give maybe to throw Morrie a bone because they thought he was such a dynamo. You know, I'm not sure.
Bob said he had star potential basically, you know, and he got him a big role in Goodfellas. That is mind blowing. We should probably move on though.
Well, because
even we haven't seen the deleted scenes.
I know, but I want to throw something right onto that real quick, and that's amazing. That's amazing. This will transition into another character I want to just briefly touch on as well too in the hour. But the sort of lack of backstory where you as the audience are sort of putting together, you know, like, you know, Rita and Rupert's sort of connection in high school. But one other connection that's not really explained at all, it leaves it all up to the imagination, is the connection between Rupert Pupkin and Sandra Bernhardt's character, Masha. Which to me, like, you get these little, and I'm sure the deleted scenes shine more on this, of course, but there is you get little hints of it, you know, and I love to imagine what their origin story and what their history is. Did they date? Were they together at one point? What was going on? Because she's a weird character. The fact that she's like this rich girl, you know, it's like really we only get that, but then you also understand that there was this one time they had at a Howard Johnson's that she mentions and giving him, you know, like delivering him coffee or something. Like, what the fuck is up with that? You know?
Yeah.
He
is poor.
I was gonna say, I love how the title card sets up that relationship. You know, it's just her hands in the window and him peeking in. You know, I'd love.
That's a great shot with the song kicks in.
It's such an unusual shot, but it's awesome to look at, and it serves a great story purpose. So,
you know, that's one of the few sort of classic Marty flourishes is the title sequence, and what I mean by that is like seen later in, you know, the 90s, Goodfellas and Casino. It's very dramatic. Like when that song cue kicks the fuck in on that freeze frame. That really got, because I'd forgotten that. When I rewatched it, I was like, oh, that's really effective in that song. It lets it play out, that Ray Charles shit.
But it's like, well, I was just gonna say, but yeah, it's like, just like their relationship. I don't know. To me, just I think leaves a lot to, you know, sort of infer, you know, in terms of, where they're headed. And she's a very unusual character in this movie for someone like her, like someone who's, this rich sort of person to be obsessed and in love with someone like Jerry. And, I have to say that I do like some of the...
She probably had daddy issues.
Yeah. Oh.
Daddy, come on. Daddy.
Well, inside joke here on the show, but we'll also, but the fact that she makes a little red sweater for him and stuff and everything too. I mean, who the fuck thought of that? And writing this fucking script.
It sounds like a slice of life though, like a stalker.
Yeah.
Like I could see a poor little rich girl in New York City who just gets fixated one day, because she probably had parents who were, very, absent. And
unloving.
Like just have a nanny, but she would watch. Guess what? Every night, Jerry Langford would be there on TV and kind of tuck her in. Just weird pathology.
It is weird, like that they don't go more into her. I think that's one of the things, like one of my bones with the film to pick. I think is that it feels not. It feels a little like unshapely in some areas. Like we go really deep into Rupert. And then Sandra Bernhard's character, not so much, but then she becomes a really big character at the end, and you spend a lot of time with her. So I was left with those questions too that you're bringing up, Evan. And I think it's a weird thing to walk away from, is to kind of, it feels like a little bit like there's a puzzle piece missing or something, which I don't think is a great feeling in a movie always. Something that's kind of on a fundamental level like that. But I do think that Sandra Bernhard is like, she really gooses the second half. I like her performance when it's just her and Jerry together in that moment, and she's like improving those lines, and like some of the lines that made me laugh out loud in the movie were like her improving those lines, saying like, like, I want to tell you everything about myself, and I want to lift it on the Shirelles. I want to be black or whatever. All the things that she's saying.
Put on some Tina Turner.
I wish I was Tina Turner, just dancing through the room.
Just put
that's like that is right out of her like one woman show an
absolutely
But if I can just be the bad guy here for just 2 seconds, is I don't mind her in general. I don't mind that performance, those lines, that improv with Jerry, who's stoic, which is hilarious. He's just sitting there and this woman's going crazy and he's just like staring blankly. But I didn't really take to the cross-cutting, because I think that it kept undercutting the build towards him
Pupkin.
getting, So I was just like, and I was also trying to figure out the logic of it, rationally, like what am I to get out of this cross-cutting other than just like they're in this
passage of time. I will say, I will agree. I mean, I love this movie. It's one of my favorite of Scorsese's movies, but just because for how unique it is among his movies. And you also mentioned earlier about the freeze frame and how that's a real Marty flourish that pops at you right there. But this movie, to me, also shows a lot of restraint for Scorsese too, because it isn't going over the top, and it isn't quite in his sort of music video-y or rock.
It's far from Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh yeah, exactly. For sure. But to go back to Sandra Bernhard and those scenes you're talking about, I do agree that I think they go back to the well maybe one time too many, where you're starting to feel it. You're starting to feel, Sandra and Jerry Lewis, their little set piece. I think it happens maybe 1 to 2 times too many. Where I do agree with you, we should be focused on the ramping of the tension that's supposed to be.
Maybe even just like cut it down, something.
Right. It doesn't go anywhere either. Ultimately, like he gets away, Jerry gets away or whatever. But there's some moments where Jerry has been talking about things that he wanted to do with the film. It must have been hard on set with like Scorsese, Jerry Lewis, and DeNiro, like
one of the big egomaniacs. Well, but he's
Yeah.
really the big egomaniac of all time. Jerry Lewis.
And they're all trying to steer the ship, right? And they're all, but he said that he did take a backseat, but I think he obviously contributed stuff. He talked about how the woman yells like you should get cancer. Like apparently he directed that moment, and told her what to do. And I think he was throwing around a lot of comedy timing, like trying to like school Sandra Bernhard and stuff. Like, no,
I heard he was cruel to her.
Count to 3 and then say it. Yeah, she actually says something in the Letterman interview with her. He's like, "How'd you get along with Jerry Lewis?" And you can tell she's kind of like oh, I love him. You know, she's being like hammy, like
Snarko.
There's definitely some conflict. But one of the things he said was he wanted her to like. He wanted a big ending for her. He wanted like to smack her and have her flip over backwards and hit the candles and the glass table and fall over and stuff. He wanted like a big pratfall from her to like end that scene, which I think is actually a good instinct. Like there's a big button on that scene, but it was just a low budget movie. There's no stunt person. She would have had to do it herself. She's in her fucking underwear there. You know,
I like her running naked, almost naked in the street though after him. I thought that was actually a good ending for that moment.
That was a little real. I think it got a little real in that moment where I think he was. I think because Jerry Lewis I think is in total playing Jerry Lewis autopilot, which we should talk about too.
I was just going to say we're running out of time. Let's pivot to what I think is maybe the best thing about the film, which is this killer Jerry Lewis performance. And my only note is, and I'll just open it up to you guys, is just for me, Jerry is killing me every time because he's doing this deadpan rage. And just his face where it's like, not only Bernhard, but also DeNiro are like, acting, in character and, part of this plot. And like, they're like performing and everything. And then Jerry's just stoically like, get out, and it feels so true to him. Like, that this is like second nature for him to dress somebody down with cutting, ugly, deadpan bitterness. And so, he steals the movie for me. He's hypnotizing to watch. And again, Jerry, here's my quick side note, is the same year he made the most earth-shatteringly stupid, insane, psychotic film ever. Not just Jerry Lewis film, but but of all time. We covered this about last year for my birthday. Cracking Up was made around this time and came out around this time. So he's got this great performance. And he really is in command of his face, his body, his gestures, very subtle, like Marty's being subtle, Jerry's being subtle. And then, total side note, Cracking Up is this insane monster of goofy blankness. And it's a moment you could count on, as we keep ending every show with, is a Jerry moment. There you go. That's what I'm saying. So it's the same guy. It's the two faces of Jerry.
That's so weird. I saw an interview where he's talking about both movies, talking about Scorsese King of Comedy and Smorgasbord.
Double feature at 1 fucking hour cinema.
That's
Watch them at the same time. Yeah, maybe that'd be
absolutely.
His performance is stellar. It's so real. It feels real. And I think it's so real that I think it does impact the other ones a little bit. I think like it makes De Niro's more cartoonish and less real. And Sandra Bernhard is already over the top, but I think, and I thought I was detecting a little bit of, in those interviews with Jerry, I thought I was detecting a little bit of him criticizing De Niro's performance, like going like, well, I wouldn't have, I could never go that big. Well, I shouldn't say big. I should say, loud. Or so he does give a little bit. I feel like he was giving a little bit of critique, like he wasn't 100% on board, but he was just praising. Interesting. Bob is like a genius or whatever, but he also kind of.
Well, you know what it is. We talked about this last week or whatever it was. Evan was. This is an interesting thought. Is I was saying that the word on the street with 1941 back then, all those guys, in the school, that Spielberg was in, were saying, "Wait, Steven made a comedy. He's not funny." Right. And I got to say, is Marty funny? I mean, Marty can be funny, and of course, Goodfellas has very funny moments and stuff. But like, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, or especially early on, it's like, it's kind of shocking. Like, wait, Martin is trying to make a movie with comedy, and De Niro is trying to be funny. And I know it's cringe funny, and it's like anti-funny and meta funny, but like, they are dipping into Jerry's house, is I guess all I'm really trying to say. Jerry lives there, and that must have been strange for him to kind of maybe look at them like, so this is what you guys think like the architecture of comedy is. Now on the other hand, Jerry is insane and awful quite often in his comedy. But I'll give him credit, he does know how comedy works.
For sure.
He does know that.
Sure.
And can I just point out, and I'll totally shut up even for the rest of the podcast, my Jerry moment is, and this is I think where Jerry and De Niro work well together, is the cue card reading scene.
Oh yeah.
Where Jerry, it's super hardcore
Jerry comedy,
like deadpan. It's total. No, but he's just like, the cue card is It's upside down.
Yeah.
That shreds, guys, and that's really good back and forth between those two guys. And he's being a big foppish fool, DeNiro. Like the card's upside down; it's in the wrong order, and he's like,
classic.
The card is blank, and he's just so deadpan, trying to get through this.
Yeah,
that's all.
As long as we're doing favorite Jerry's, like mine is, and it takes a little bit of the backstory or the behind the scenes intel to appreciate, but the part where he comes back. Jerry Langford comes back to his house that's been invaded by Rupert and Rita. The butler takes this John oat, like struggles to open the door, and I guess like it was one of those things where like the actor really was having trouble opening the door, and they're all improving. So if he finally gets the door open, and Jerry's like, "What the hell? You gonna open the door? I've been sitting out there for 8 minutes." Or whatever. And he's got
incredible.
You can open the goddamn door. Mr. Langford. Standing out there 8 minutes. What was with the door?
Dude,
it's a great moment.
That moment was when I watched it just earlier. I'm like, that's a little too real. Like that was real Jerry coming through there.
He didn't even know the cameras were rolling.
Like just no, exactly.
I think he's just in the moment, like improving, like and just going with the flow.
Absolutely, guys. Or that that's the real face of Jerry fucking Lewis.
Yeah, it is. That's the man right there. It's probably 10 times worse than that. But anyway, all right. So let's while we've arrived at that scene, let's talk about it. To me, it's one of my favorite scenes in the whole flick is where of course, Rupert brings Rita out uninvited to Jerry Langford's summer home, and that scene, man, is it's the funniest, it's the most awkward, it's the most cringe, but it's also the scariest scene in some ways too. In terms, and it's really tense. I mean, it's super tense when he, obviously we're here, we're in Jerry's home, and the butler guy's flipping out, and he does an incredible job too. Like, I'm having a heart attack, and all that stuff. But then also when Rita starts to turn on the records, have a drink, steal something or whatever, like, shit, man, it's and then of course just the performance of Jerry in that scene when he's dressing him down, and the way he handles it too, where like he doesn't quite yell at them, or at first he kind of indulges it a little bit, and then waits for that perfect moment just to be like, get the fuck out of here. Yeah, it's great. It's an incredible scene. Yeah,
I think you're right. Tense is a good word for it. It's cringe and tense, which doesn't happen all the time. It's
a nice reaction. His reaction is what builds the tension, that they are just kind of like playing, goofing around in that world, and we don't see his reaction yet, so it builds up the intent. It builds up our anticipation of like what's going to happen.
And shout out to her. What's her name? Right. Diane Abbott. The character of the lady friend of Rupert. She's playing this different. She has a different context, and in a way, she's the most sane person in that moment in the film, kind of. Because she's just immediately. She does some nice stuff with her face, where she's just observing Jerry dressing him down,
right?
And like with the slow burn, and of course Rupert's response to the slow burn of like, I despise you, I hate you, he's like, hey, what's going on? Hey, don't talk about my lady like.
Well, I was going to say that,
and and her face starts falling, because she's like, this is worse than I thought it was 10 seconds ago,
right?
And now, it's just getting worse and worse and worse. We were so not invited, right? But even worse than not invited,
right? And then it gets really it gets even it adds a whole nother layer, because you as the viewer too, it's like you're watching someone like her just be completely humiliated, like totally completely humiliated. And in that moment you just said too, where Jerry looks at Bob and or Rupert and says,
did anyone ever tell you you're a moron?
Or whatever, and then that's when he's like, well, I didn't want you to talk to Rita like that, and then it just like makes it so much.
I can't even look
worse.
at it. I'm like, I look away. I'm like, that is so rough.
It's rough.
Like,
Rita's got her own issue. She does steal that thing, like you said, right? And then she's like poor, down on her luck, and I know she's also kind of like a call girl. I think we're supposed to like not. I think she's supposed to be kind of rough around the edges too. I think that there's supposed to be. Characters are supposed there's not supposed to be no redeeming characters in this movie. I feel like that was the intention. I don't know if they landed it, but I think that's where what they wanted to have happen, because I mean, Rupert has no good quality. He's not funny. He's dangerous.
He really doesn't.
Which
is a very bold thing to do. That's your
the
lead
detail they put in
character.
about Rita feels like something that they wanted her to like not be a perfect character. Sandra Bernhard's really like, get away from me. And then Jerry's a despicable person too.
Right.
I know.
It's very bitter and dark. Well, here's my Pauline Kael shout out. She said basically what you're saying, and she didn't take to it though. She was like, what is the audience supposed to do where everyone is just irredeemable in their own stripe, their own way? And if we can, we're running out of time. If you guys don't mind, I'd like to talk about what I think is a kind of a bumpy ride, which is the ending of the film, and just to open it up to your thoughts, because I entertain the thought that, and I want to hear what you're saying on this, are we seeing a less and less realistic portrayal of the circumstances as this film goes on, to the point where at the very end, like Rupert Pupkin is sitting in a mental hospital in reality, but what we're seeing on the screen is him like, all right, everybody, you're a great audience. And that's just like, because we do see him having fantasies. There are, articulated, so is the film shifting? And that's the theory. Taxi Driver, some people say, where Sybil Shepherd wants to get back with him after he shoots all the, the mobsters, is like, is that a fantasy? Or is that real? So what do you guys think?
Well, 50% of all theories seem to be like it was a dream, or it was a fantasy.
Taxi Driver.
Just in general, that's always
film
like a film.
About?
Any film ever, people are always like, was it all a dream? You know what I mean? That's always the kind of go-to thing.
The Wizard of Oz story. Yeah.
Right. But there is like a, there is something weird in this movie where like I got lost for a second, because there is the fantasies early on. They're very clearly delineated. Like when he's imagining himself out to lunch with Jerry. When they first get on the train to go out there together, and she's all got a wig on, and Rita's got a wig on, and they're like going to Jerry's house, I thought that was a fantasy for a second, up to the point when they arrived at Jono's, and Jono opened the door. I was going like, is this him like imagining this weekend happening? It took me a while for it to realize, and I had to run it back to catch. I don't know if I just got distracted for a second, but I was having a problem with that too. So I don't know. Maybe it could be a.
I'm not saying you have a problem with it. I'm just saying like that's an interesting thought.
Not a problem, but I just got lost for a second.
More
is
into
this
the unreal?
Yeah,
is this always like got an eye on the unreal?
Well, for me, I've seen this movie many, many, many times, and over the years, and I would say for most of the times I've seen it up until just this most recent viewing, I've always looked at it as more of a fantasy. The ending where we see the little news package about his success after getting released from jail. This time, however, when I watched it, I really was, I don't know, it hit me in a way where it was like, you know what? This feels, because maybe it's the world we live in today. I don't know. Maybe this was resonating more with the way things are today and how everything works on social media, and also like, mass shooters and freaky people that are out there lurking, that it's actually darker of an ending if it's real. If that's really what did happen, is that he comes out of jail as a celebrity and everyone embraces him.
That kind of reality should only be a sick man's fantasy.
Right.
You know what I mean? That should not be on earth.
But it's not.
Can I just say though,
because it's not a fantasy, because people do commit crimes and get famous for them, right?
That's what I'm saying.
No, it's true. It's so true. One thought is, the thing that comes to mind a lot is the film Network. You guys are familiar with that? No, it ends where a guy who's clearly unstable, mentally ill, for ratings, he's shot to death on TV, and it's a kind of a broad, takedown of like TV culture. And this film, King of Comedy, is of a stripe of television takedown cinema, being there, where Peter Sellers is basically, his whole brain
real
is
life
just television. Sure, right. And then Simon too did that, where there's a cult of worshippers of the television, very obscure, Alan Arkin's Simon. Whoa. And then this one, and of course Network too. And so for me though, I hope that it's not reality, simply because it feels less fresh than a pure disturbing fantasy world, because it feels like a little bit of a dated like takedown by sophisticates, the coastal people, about like the brain damage that television brings on people. And that just feels, I mean, it's obvious and it's true, but it just feels a little dated. It just feels like of its time in a bad way to me. So I hope that wasn't his intention. Something so sort of pragmatic, that's not quite the right word, but you know what I mean? Something so
you mean it's just kind of like is it just that it's kind of like
is it just a social critique? Which sounds kind of limited to me.
Right, surface level, you mean, kind of thing?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm just saying, like, it seems unlike Marty to just have like this surface level, simple social criticism, like from a one-to-one, like, boy, don't we agree? TV really is bringing down our culture. It's like, it's a little prosaic to me. So
I don't know if I saw it in that way. Like I said, it hit me. It sort of hit me tonight as more of, people who do, like it kind of forecasted the 90s to me in a way, where you see a lot of these kind of true crime celebrities, even not
Fisher.
like. Yeah, exactly. Or like that, or like, Joey Buttafuoco, all these people, that would become such, celebrities based off of really stupid,
so not so much
petty
TV,
crimes.
but tabloid.
Thank you, tabloid. Like it hit me in a way that like he's now a tabloid sort of star, which
That's
is something
still
we do see.
It just feels like
right.
So unlike Marty to have something that's so sort of relatively limited about, like, look at this social ill of tabloid reality. I don't know, who cares, but but it makes me, it captivates my imagination to think that he's wanted to have it be this fantasy realm.
It could be though,
and how it's shifting more into that. Anyway, I'm repeating myself, but just I don't know.
I feel like maybe like since it's Bob, I feel like maybe Marty didn't have like full ownership of it or felt that way, and that maybe why that has like the movie has some flaws or something, and I think that could possibly also be why the message is a little bit like feels like off-brand a little bit for him too, is maybe because there's something I love this movie, but there's something off about it for Scorsese for me, and I that was my feeling when I found out that it was really DeNiro kind of like bringing the script to him and like and kind of asking him to do it twice, that I felt like that maybe his heart wasn't in it or something 100%. In fact, people ask him about it now, and he's like, I haven't watched it since it came out, Marty? And he said, I'm too embarrassed. Yeah, he says he's too embarrassed.
Marcus, I think what you're saying is what I'm feeling too. It's like, I feel like maybe Marty was a little lost and adrift because he's still relatively young, and he just went like 1, 2, 3, 4, like huge things, huge films, huge flops, and he was sort of spun out.
And he wanted to do Last Temptation of Christ. That was like, that's what he wanted to do. And then DeNiro didn't want to do that, and
right.
Like,
I know.
Yes.
Yeah, and so
this is the Marty before Goodfellas, right? Where I mean, like when things really all came together, and then it's just off to the races for the rest of his career.
And he just dialed in like where he's coming from. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
for better or for worse.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe but that makes it interesting and kind of messy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's
what I'm saying. Like, there's something about, to me, where it's like I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. I'd way rather watch this than Goodfellas any day of the week for me.
I know what you mean.
Because it isn't perfect, and it is such a bizarre idea for a movie. And the fact that there are no, redeemable characters or anything, and it's this odd, weird thing that exists in this man's filmography makes it way more interesting to me,
Definitely. And I know we've talked about After Hours, which is like one of my favorite Scorsese
I love that
movies.
movie.
I know, Evan, maybe you're not so. I don't know
Let's
how you feel about it, but we should do it. But
we have to do it.
It is really interesting in light of this film too, that he's like sort of stepping. He's sort of tepidly moving into comedy with this film, and then After Hours is like a full blown like dark comedy, like and then
it's very dark.
Yeah. And then he doesn't really go back there again, I guess.
No, I know. That's what's so interesting to me. Like otherwise he has a comedic sense, and it's in Goodfellas and everything.
It's all coming back to me now. He wanted to make documentaries too. He thought about, even at this point, I read that too. He thought about just like, I'm going to stop doing narrative movies and just do documentaries again.
Well, he did The Last Waltz was right before, or right around this time, right? Or right before Raging Bull, or So he was doing that. But I mean, it's a fascinating movie, and it's a fascinating part of his career for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We got 4 minutes. But I could throw out just I don't know if there's a shape to this, but like the middle of the film is really special to me, which is all the office scenes of talking about growing cringe and tension, or him repeatedly going to Langford's office. You guys want to talk about that? Yeah. My thing was the landscape is what, that's all I'm saying, and I'll shut up. The landscape is so antiseptical and so Little Italy and warm and 60s, 70s. It's so carpeted and like just like single monotone colored walls. Talk to me like those office scenes.
Yeah, it's amazing. Is that cork? Like it's great.
Yeah, I love that. Good for sound.
Good for sound. Yeah. No, it's all awesome. It's so great that you get to like also.
That's
do like
good stuff.
No, it is. It's great, and like I said, you really do get to. It's just great to watch because you do get to see like I think a real slice of who Rupert Pupkin really is in a lot of those scenes, and it's desperate, it's cringe, it's sad, it's tragic, and it's disturbing, and it works so well.
It goes up a notch. There's a nice kind of rhythm to it because it's like every visit is going to get more uncomfortable and cringe and tense, and it delivers. It's like, and it goes all the way to, of course, the final result, which is being pushed out of the room, by like, heavy, security guards, out the door. But as he says, I was not thrown out. They walked me out, like,
excuse
I love
me?
his distinction.
Excuse me?
Yeah. God, there's so much I want to talk about. Like how his comedy monologue is pretty dark. Like it's all like vomit and alcoholic dads. It's like, whoa, the pain is just like on the surface.
Yeah.
Like that's actually what you really learn the most about him is his monologue.
I know.
Isn't that creepy?
I love the demo tape that he makes too. It's like so not what they wanted when they ask him to make a demo tape. And it's like he's so clueless as to what they actually want. And then you mentioned the production design in that office is really interesting. And then the production design in his house has to be mentioned too. Oh, those big cutouts and stuff. And what an interesting choice! Like
set pieces in film history are the cardboard cutout Liza Minnelli and Jerry Langford.
It's such an interesting choice because it's like it's not like the taxi driver's apartment, which is like so real and like this dingy
gritty.
And like Rupert's supposed to be poor and lives with his mother, but he's got these. They really were just like, we don't need to go real. Like it would serve the scene better if he had these giant cutouts and like a huge audience.
Well, here's the thing. No, Marcus, I'm so glad you're saying this because back to this like the surrealism of King of Comedy. My last thing is just, yes, it seems plausible that he could have two cutouts and rehearse and practice by having, like Liza here and initial. No, but then it gets weird where a thing that I'm sure does not have, which is this wall-sized, like photo montage or photo mural of an audience, and then it zooms out to this like big empty space, like an art gallery in Soho.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is he doesn't live there. That's not his place. That's not anywhere. That's his mind. Brilliant.
Yeah. And I got a shout out when I was in Berlin many years ago, over 10 years ago. There was a Scorsese exhibit, and they had recreated that exact hallway. And it was pretty sweet.
Awesome.
Take a picture.
But
that's
yeah,
awesome.
Of course.
Sandra Bernhard's apartment too is like that with all the candles and stuff.
Yeah.
That's like a similar thing. That's not like they couldn't really do that light like 100, 200 candles or whatever.
No, it's amazing.
It's also like a vision in her mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Real quick, I want to.
Surrealism. That's my last one.
Okay, thank you. Because I want to just dovetail one quick observation you made, Marcus, which is about the demo tape. I think they nailed it in terms of a true outsider, somebody who would really deliberately make all those choices to like make his own version of the show and to get really sort of mechanical and intense and weird and not even get what they wanted. And that's kind of nailing some like private press outsider shit, like way before
DIY, Super 8 horror movie.
Yeah, right, totally.
That's a huge theme of this movie is critique of insider, outsider on both sides.
There you go.
True.
Yeah, exactly. Great ending words there.
Movie.
All right. Awesome. All right.
What a movie.
That was 1 fucking hour on King of Comedy, KOC.
Another one where an hour's not enough. I mean, a lot was left on the floor, on the table, whatever the phrase is.
Totally. Yeah, tons more to get into there, but I'm glad we finally got into it. We didn't explain at the top of the hour, but shortly or right before we did our Taxi Driver episode, there was a coin flip of if we were going to do Taxi Driver or King of Comedy, and so
Last
now we
summer.
finally, King of Comedy lost, but now we finally getting around to it. So
now, can I say, let's commit, guys, to After Hours, maybe sooner than later. I'd like this. Like let's just follow through and do After Hours like next month or something. Really?
Okay,
right.
Sure.
And then
I'm really
Kundu.
fascinated.
We'll do Kundu.
Kundu, Marty, Kundu. I liked it.
I liked it.
Marty! Kundun! I liked it!
Fucking Christopher.
Marty.
That's the best line.
Kundun.
ever.
I know.
Kundun.
It's the best.
I liked it.
I like it.
Like, you wouldn't think I would. People don't like it. Don't watch
know.
Goodfellas 100 times and never Kundun, but
Like
I liked it.
It's so funny that like Christopher Moltisanti, like in his brain, in that like nanosecond of seeing Marty, thought like, "What's the thing I could say that would make him really happy?"
Right.
You know,
His head would turn. You know. He wouldn't. Don't say like, "Are you talking to me?" Oh, he's like Kundun, because he's a bit of a cynic, Christopher.
Right. He's also a big fan of The Departed. The soundtrack.
Oh, right.
The system has no balls, though.
Yeah, right. God,
Right?
I guess
Remember?
seeing Christopher must be a huge King of Comedy fan. I mean, he sort of indiscriminately likes all Scorsese
Character?
movies. Yeah.
What?
Don't you think?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, why not? He's got them all on DVD.
Likes them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's talk about next week and get out of here. All right, so we're back in action now. The schedule's back alive. We're in full force here in 2023. Next week, weekly movies. Here we go. Next week is going to be an exciting one. We have a special guest returning to the show after it'll be a second time on the show. Our good friend Lars Nilsson of the Austin Film Society is going to be coming back, and we're going to be going back. You know, we're going to be going back into, what is this, 1960? Is that when this movie came out?
1960.
Yeah, 1960. Yeah. We're going to be doing our first Ingmar Bergman, y'all. Yeah, Bergman. So
not
we're going to be
not
Bergman. Ingmar Birdman. We're going to be doing.
That's my new band.
That's great.
Oh my god, we're going to be doing one fucking hour on The Virgin Spring. I'm fucking excited about this, guys.
Yeah.
We
Very
got
interesting. And I'm sure Lars is he put in a request, you know, and we went for it. So he'll have a lot of ammo, I'm sure, to bring, and I can't wait to just observe and listen, what Lars's take on it. It sounds great.
Yeah, I'm really excited to rewatch the movie. It's been a long time, and I always, Bergman's the shit, and I'm glad that we're going to be doing some more world cinema. We're going to try and hit some more of those this year because I think we only got like one in there so far.
Yeah, we're leaving the country.
Yeah, we're leaving the country.
Finally.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they shot part of Star Wars in England, so I think that counts.
Okay, I'll take it.
Okay, all right. So, all right, everybody. So next week is going to be one fucking hour on The Virgin Spring with special guest Lars Nilsson. But I guess that wraps it up for today. Make sure you're following us. Subscribe on the YouTube. Follow us on social medias. At one number. It's at #1 fucking hour on Twitter or at 1 fucking hour on Instagram. Follow us, subscribe, do all that bullshit, and I guess we'll see you next week. But we can't let you go, and I'm very excited for what our very on brand moment of Zen is going to be this week. So enjoy that, everybody.
Glasses.
Yeah, right. I know, it's insane. Just getting off the set of King of Comedy. Okay,
exactly.
All right, everybody, definitely enjoy your moment of Zen, and we will see you, of course, next week. Have a good rest of your week. All right, everybody, take care. So long.
Later.
Hello?
Hi.
Who is this?
This is the fellow that's been staring at you all evening.
Where are you?
Right over here.
Oh.
Listen, I have a few ideas here as soon as you...
Okay, thank you. Never mind. Sorry, I rang the wrong apartment.
Take this gentleman that was. He had his hang-ups, though, and he had his hang-downs.
So call me now. Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that. Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, self-deprecating.
Is the right exactly is